Hi, I'm Tasha from One Big Happy Life, and this is the Lifestyle Fix brought to you by Skillshare. In today's video, I'm going to be sharing 6 minimalist insights that anyone can learn from. Minimalism means different things to different people, but I came across a definition from Joshua Becker of becoming minimalist that gives us a great baseline to work with. According to Joshua, minimalism is intentionally living with only the things that you really need. Minimalism encourages people to reject the consumerism and instead focus on owning fewer things so that you can make space for the things that truly make life meaningful. Things like your mental and spiritual health, your relationships with others, self-growth, and making a difference in the world. Now, when it comes to deciding exactly how many things you should own, well, that varies from minimalist to minimalist. Regardless of whether you see owning less than 100 items or living in a tiny house, to use two extreme examples in your future, these 6 minimalist principles can still come in handy. Number 1, ruthlessly declutter all of your spaces. Over on One Big Happy Life, I'll often make videos cataloging our attempts to slowly declutter our spaces. And whenever I do, I always emphasize the importance of taking the time to declutter your things before focusing on organizing the space. You see, just in the act of living, we acquire things, and those things have a tendency to pile up and take up more and more space in our homes and in our lives. We outgrow hobbies, books, clothing, things that once held meaning and use in our lives just don't anymore. And the next thing you know, you have a basement and a garage full of stuff that isn't serving to do anything but add extra stress in your life. That's why it's so important to take time to go through the things you have and work on decluttering first. As you go through your items, ask yourself if the item is truly worth keeping in your space, and if not, pass it on to someone else who'll get more use out of it. After you've decluttered and purged, then you can move on to organizing what's left. Number 2, think of the storage and maintenance cost of things before you buy them. The other thing that I personally love about decluttering is that it makes me think twice before buying anything else that might add to the clutter in my home. The more attention I pay to the spaces that I live in, the more aware and protective I am of those spaces. Stopping to consider how you plan to use something, the amount of care involved with keeping that item, and figuring out exactly where you plan to store it before you buy it can go a long way towards curbing those impulse purchases. A great way to make sure that you aren't adding to the clutter in your home is to have a one in, one out rule. So for every new item that you bring into your home, you need to choose an item that you already own and remove that from your home. Another alternative is to see whether you can borrow an item instead of buying it. Sharing rarely used items with friends and neighbors lets you own and use many more items without the additional hassle or expense of storing them. Number 3, quality over quantity. While minimalism is about the conscious ownership of fewer items, that doesn't mean that the items themselves are cheap. In fact, it tends to be the opposite. Because they have fewer possessions, which then get used more, minimalists tend to value quality over quantity. Take a capsule wardrobe as an example. A traditional capsule is around 30 items of clothing. This curated clothing collection is highly versatile and creates many outfit combinations, but you do end up wearing your pieces far more often than you would if you had a traditional wardrobe, which means that to maximize value in terms of cost per wear, it makes sense to look for higher quality items that can withstand multiple washes and regular use. So instead of just focusing on spending the absolute least amount on every purchase, consider the cost per use instead. When you do, you might just find that the better value is actually the more durable yet pricier item. Number 4, the less stuff you have, the less time you spend taking care of it. Last week over on One Big Happy Life, I shared 6 lessons that I learned while I was 36. My 36th year was one of the most time-crunched years of my life, and the busier I got, the less I found myself wanting to spend time on just caring for the things that I own. Throughout the past year, I've purged so many items from our home just to cut down on the amount of time and mental space involved with dealing with all of those extra items. And each time I do, I feel this immense sense of relief and peace that there's one less thing in the home for us to have to maintain. Now, don't get me wrong, there are plenty of things in my home that are not essential, but having them adds value to my life that outweighs the time involved with caring for the item. But if that isn't the case, then I'm happy to let the item go. Number 5, the less money you spend, the easier it is to reach your financial goals. It's pretty straightforward that the less money you spend on things that you don't need, the more of it that you'll have available to pay off debt or invest for your future or to put aside for emergencies. Of course, that is easier said than done. Normally, finding a way to spend less money and to stick with it can be really difficult. To be successful at anything, you need to work on developing good habits that support you as you're working towards reaching your goals. Spending less money is no different. Because minimalism is about not spending money as the default so that you're able to make more measured and well thought out spending decisions, it makes it so much easier to build these anti-spending habits where not spending is your default habit. And so then you don't get that same kind of decision fatigue. You also don't put yourself into positions where you're tempted to spend. What really separates minimalism from general frugality, aside from the fact that minimalism isn't about buying the least expensive thing, is that the goal is to recognize where your spending doesn't actually add value or happiness to your life and to avoid those things. For example, as a general rule, if you're a minimalist, you won't be taking family trips to the mall just for a lazy Sunday. Instead, you might go out for a walk with your kids or play some board games. Number 6, focus on finding happiness outside of material possessions. People often overspend for many different reasons, but spending to feel that temporary high that we get from buying new things is pretty high on most people's lists. Minimalism encourages you to avoid those emotional shopping purchases and instead focus on building lasting, true happiness in your life. Minimalism isn't so much about the hows of discovering what's going to create a fulfilling and happy life for you. It's more about brushing away the things that we're told should make us happy, clearing away all that clutter so that we have the space and time to discover what happiness truly means to us. So now that we've talked about some minimalist insights that anyone can learn from, let's talk about a great way to grow your expertise in other areas without adding clutter to your life. Skillshare. Skillshare is an online learning community with thousands of classes in design, business, technology, and more. Premium membership gives you unlimited access to high-quality classes on essential topics, so you can improve your skills, unlock new opportunities, and do the work you love. Looking to build your own creative product business? Check out Jeff Staples' class, The Staples of Branding, From Purpose to Product, where you'll learn what it takes to build a brand from the ground up. Click the link in the description box to join the millions of students already learning on Skillshare today and to take advantage of a special offer just for TFD viewers. Head on over to Skillshare to get 2 months of unlimited access to over 25,000 classes for free. Act now so you don't miss out and start learning today. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell and tune in here every single Friday for another new episode of The Lifestyle Fix. See you next week.